Spiritual warfare is millenniums old. The fight of good and evil has been there since the beginning. It's literally God versus the devil, fought through the people. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're glad you came back. Now we're going to jump right back in this. So we're going to give you, we were talking about counter propaganda. So we're going to give some examples of counter propaganda. And you're going to recognize some of these names. And when you hear them, most of you should go, why? Because you've been hearing them and hearing them and hearing them. Where up till a few years ago, these weren't very common terms. So the first example of counter propaganda is the first word, disinformation. You've been hearing a lot about, well, that's disinformation. It's counter propaganda. Okay? So, this is the definition of disinformation. Disinformation is false information deliberately spread to deceive people. Now, disinformation usually comes from the people who are spreading the wrong information. See, we think those are the ones who are trying to inform us. And generally they're the ones that are spreading the disinformation. Because they're trying to create a narrative. That's what happens. It should not be confused with misinformation. It should not be confused with misinformation. Okay? Because there's a difference between disinformation and misinformation. So misinformation is false information, but is not deliberate. Fake news has sometimes been categorized as a type of disinformation. Okay? So this is why I'm saying to watch, be careful what you watch. Misinformation refers to inaccuracies that stem from error. Disinformation is deliberate falsehood. So in my 53 years on this earth, I didn't hear disinformation and misinformation thrown at me all the time. Nowadays, it seems that when you hear the truth, and they don't want you to hear the truth, they call it disinformation or misinformation. It's psychological warfare. Because they're trying to teach you what you're hearing that is the truth is not the truth, so you'll believe them and just fall in line. That's how it works. But if you get told this is wrong all the time, even though it's right, you'll start to believe it's wrong. Because of the repetition and the frequency. This is why people also question their salvation. Are you really saved? Are you really a Christian?
Naozaj si kresťan?
That's what the devil uses
A to je to, čo diabol používa,
to attack you.
Aby na teba útočil.
Psychologically.
Psychologicky.
I would venture to say,
Ja by som povedal,
just like every other meeting,
ako na každom inom stretnutí,
most people in here at one point in time
že väčšina ľudí, ktorá sa tu nachádza,
has questioned their salvation.
Že niekedy spochybnili svoje spasenie.
I just asked the same question in Prague last week.
Minulé pred týždňom som sa v Prahe túto istú otázku opýtal.
And most people put up their hand.
A väčšina ľudí tak mala.
So it's pretty much the same everywhere.
Takže vlastne je to podobné všade.
If you don't believe you're saved,
ak neveríš, že si spasený,
it's really only for a couple of reasons.
Tak je to iba pre niekoľko z dôvodov.
One, you're living in sin.
Po prvé, žiješ v hriechu.
Or two,
po druhé,
the enemy
nepriateľ
is in your mind
je v tvojej mysli,
trying to teach you that you're not saved.
Snaží sa ti naučiť, že, alebo ti povedať, že nie si spasený.
But it's psychological.
Ale je to psychologické.
Because it's fear.
Pretože je to strach.
You see? So, now, there's a whole bunch more we could go on disinformation, but I want to talk about misinformation a little bit.
A teda je veľa o dezinformácii, ale chcel som povedať niečo o chybných informáciách.
Misinformation is incorrect or misleading information.
Alebo informácia, ktorá ťa zlým smerom vedie.
It differs from disinformation,
je iná ako dezinformácia,
which is deliberately deceptive
ktorá je tak vedomé podávaná
and propagated information.
A je to vlastne propagujúca niečo informácia.
Rumors are information.
A tie také, čo sa tak hovorí, tie také, on tak, že sa hovorí,
not attributed to any particular source.
Že nie je to vlastne ako keby spojené s nejakým konkrétnym zdrojom.
And are unreliable and unverifiable.
A teda sú to iba také keci, že nedá sa to overiť ani zistiť nejaký zdroj toho.
So this is why we don't want to listen to rumors and different things like that.
Preto tým takým kecom vlastne nepočúvame.
Here's a sentence you have to get.
A toto potrebuješ pochopiť.
People may be more prone to believe misinformation.
Ľudia väčšinou sú viacej otvorení veriť chybnej informácii.
Because they're emotionally connected.
Pretože sú emocionálne spojení.
To what they're listening to or reading.
Pretože sú spojení s tým, čo počúvajú alebo čítajú.
Emotion is a very powerful source.
Emócia je silný zdroj.
That's why the enemy appeals to emotion.
A preto vlastne nepriateľ sa spája s emóciami.
To get you to live out of emotion.
Aby si žil na základe emócií.
And when misinformation or something like that comes your way,
alebo keď vtedy myslíš, tá chybná informácia alebo niečo také príde ti do cesty,
you believe it.
Ty tomu veríš.
Because it stirs up emotion.
Lebo to v tebe vzbudzuje emócie.
This is why the enemy appeals to emotion.
A preto vlastne takto nepriateľ sa vlastne spája s tými emóciami.
This is why the world appeals to emotion.
A preto aj ľudia sú takto spohnutí emóciami.
Now, I don't have time to get into all this right now.
Nemám na to úplne tak veľa skúšať do hĺbky.
But another ditch that people have been taught
Ale druhý extrém, do ktorého ľudia padajú,
is that Christians are not allowed to have emotion.
Že kresťania nemajú povolené mať emócie.
False.
To je falošné.
Absolutely false.
Úplne, že nepravda.
We just taught in Prague a spirit, soul, and body.
Práve sme v Prahe učili na duša, telo.
Where I proved through Scripture
Kde som dokázal skrze písmo,
that God
že Boh
and Christ
a Kristus
had emotion.
mali emócie.
They just weren't controlled by it.
Ale neboli nimi kontrolovaní.
They didn't cry at the drop of a hat, sort of thing.
A nenariekali.
They didn't cry at a drop of a hat.
I didn't know the second part, the drop of the hat.
Yeah, I was thinking that's a Canadian term. They didn't cry over everything.
No, že by vlastne nariekali nad všetkým, ak sa hovorí, že plakať nad rozliatým liekom po slovensky.
And they're not controlled by it.
Skrátka neboli tým kontrolovaní.
It's wrong to be controlled by emotion.
Je zle byť kontrolovaný emóciou.
But it's also wrong
Ale takisto je zle
to never live by emotion.
nikdy nežiť emóciou.
You know, a lot of men,
Veľa mužov
they were taught growing up,
bolo naučení, keď vyrastali.
real men don't cry.
Práve muži neplačú.
If you cry, you're weak.
Ak plačeš, tak si slabý.
No, I would say you're weak because you don't cry.
Ja som povedala práve, že ty si slabý práve preto, lebo neplačeš.
Because you're hiding your emotions.
Lebo skrývaš svoje emócie.
Do you see the difference?
Vidíte ten rozdiel?
Jesus wept, the shortest verse in the Bible.
Krátka veta, Ježiš nariekal.
is Jesus wept.
Plakal.
Do you see? So emotion is okay.
Takže emócia je v poriadku.
As long as you're not controlled by it.
Pokým ťa neovláda.
And anyway, I'll be releasing a whole teaching on that as well.
A o tom takisto bude
Because
vyučované.
Christians are taught
Pretože kresťania sú
to
vyučovaní,
live like robots
aby žili ako roboti.
with no feeling
Bez emócií,
and no emotion.
bez žiadnych pocitov.
And if you get hurt,
A keď ti niečo zraní,
you don't have the nature of God.
tak vtedy nemáš Božiu prirodzenosť.
That is not true.
Ale to nie je pravda.
Because God had emotion.
Pretože Boh má emócie.
Anyway, okay. So, the role of social media
A svet sociálnych sietí
has made information readily available
urobil, že sú informácie naozaj veľmi ľahko dostupné
to society
pre spoločnosť
at any time.
v každom čase.
It connects vast groups of people
A spája veľké skupiny ľudí
with their information at one time.
s jednou ich informáciou v jednom čase.
Advances in technology
A napredovanie v technológiách
has impacted the way people communicate
ovplyvňuje to, ako ľudia
communicate their information,
ako komunikujú svoje informácie
and the way misinformation
a spôsob, akým chybné informácie
is spread.
sa šíria.
I've been talking a lot about social media.
A veľa sme hovorili o sociálnych sieťach.
That's how it's done.
A takto to funguje.
Social media can be very good,
Sociálne siete vedia byť veľmi dobré,
but social media can be very bad.
ale sociálne siete vedia byť veľmi zlé.
So in this modern world, we have to live by it
A teda v tomto modernom svete musíme s tým žiť,
and with it,
s tým a skrze to.
but where are you getting your so-called truth from?
Ale teda otázka je, že skadiaľ ty čerpáš tú pravdu.
They're using social media to get their message to you.
Oni používajú ich sociálne siete, aby ich správu dostali k tebe.
We need to use social media
My potrebujeme použiť sociálne siete,
to get our message to them.
aby sme tú našu správu dali iným.
That's what has to happen,
To sa potrebuje stať.
right? To make the short videos.
Aby sme robili krátke videá.
People have attention spans
Ľudia majú tú pozornosť
worse than a 1-year-old child.
horšiu ako jednoročné dieťa.
They can't concentrate. If you try to get the Bible,
Ak snažíš sa im prečítať Bibliu,
for most people,
pre väčšinu ľudí,
and you open the Bible,
otvoríš Bibliu,
and oh yes, oh look a bird,
čítajú, vtáčik,
oh look at this,
pozri,
oh look a shiny object,
svietiaci nejaký objekt, čo sa blízka.
oh my phone's ringing,
Telefón mi bude zvoniť.
because they have no attention span.
Pretože nemajú dobrú koncentráciu.
Because you've been taught not to have an attention span.
Lebo sme vyučovaní, aby sme nemali koncentráciu.
That's why TV has a break every 7 minutes.
Pretože v televízii je pomaly každá prestávka na reklamu každých 7 minút.
Because our attention spans are so short.
Lebo to, koľko vieme udržať koncentráciu, je to tak krátka doba.
Most churches
Väčšina cirkví
have gone to like a 30-minute preaching.
musela ísť až do 30-minútových kázní iba.
Why?
Prečo?
To keep the attention span of the
Aby
people.
vlastne ľudia mali stále pozornosť.
Pavol taught through the whole night.
Vyučoval celú noc.
In so much people were asleep on a windowsill and fell out.
Až tak, že ľudia zaspávali na parapete a padali z okna.
Can you imagine the Apostle Paul
Viete si predstaviť, apoštola Pavla
going into a place to preach?
išiel na miesto, kde káže.
Well, welcome, Apostle Paul. It's good to have you here.
Vítaj, apoštol Pavol, dobre ťa tu vidieť.
You have 30 minutes.
Máš 30 minút.
Come on.
Čo?
People start,
Ľudia vidí.
why? Because your attention span.
Prečo? Lebo máš takú krátku pozornosť.
It's amazing.
Je to až...
Now, I'm not saying every church service should be 6 hours long.
Nehovorím, že každá cirkev má byť 6 hodín dlhá.
But it's amazing that if the pastor is just getting after it,
Ale ako pastor sa snažia to dohľadať toho času.
and he's preaching hard,
Ťažko káže.
the people start going, well, it's
A ľudia,
long-winded today.
dlhé to je dnes.
I got to get down to the kebab house over here.
Musím už ísť naspäť.
Like you start looking at your wife and
Drgeš do ženy.
come on. This is the word of God we're talking about.
A my tu hovoríme o Božom slove.
This is life we're talking about.
O živote tu hovoríme.
Let him preach.
A
You know?
nie iba o kázaní.
But it's because our minds have been trained to have little or no attention span.
Pretože naše mysle boli naučené, aby mali žiadnu alebo minimálnu koncentráciu.
What's been good
To, čo bolo dobré,
and what's been bad
a to, čo bolo zlé,
is tablets.
sú tablety.
Kids have been trained to not have literally any attention span.
Deti boli naučené, aby nemali vôbec žiadnu dobu, kedy sa potrebujú na čo koncentrovať.
Outside their tablets.
Okrem teda ich tabletov.
Try to get them to play with something or whatever.
Majú zase niečím hrať.
And they flip out because they want their tablet.
A oni to zavadia, lebo oni chcú svoj tablet.
We are creating addiction right from a baby.
Tvoríme závislosť už doslova od bábätka.
I'm not against that stuff,
Nie som proti tomu,
but I am against it being a god to them.
ale som proti tomu, aby tá vec bola im Bohom.
We need that social interaction.
Potrebujeme tú sociálnu interakciu.
We need that loving touch.
Potrebujeme tú lásku, ten dotyk.
And people have just become totally addicted to it,
Ale ľudia sa k tomu stavili úplne, že až závislí.
including children.
Vrátanie detí.
And I get
A ja to chápem.
it's an easy babysitter.
Je to veľmi jednoduchý pestún.
Give them a tablet,
Daj mu tablet,
give them some sort of social media platform,
daj mu nejakú sociálnu sieť
and they're good for hours.
a na hodiny máš postarané.
But it's not good for them
Ale to nie je dobré pre nich.
because they don't develop their social interaction.
Lebo si nevybudujú ich sociálnu interakciu.
This is why kids these days have almost no social abilities.
A preto deti v dnešnej dobe vôbec nemajú nejaké také tie sociálne zručnosti.
Why a lot of people won't even call each other on the phone.
Veľa ľudí si už ani len nezavolá na telefón.
It's just texting.
Už je to iba, že si píšu.
Because people have lost the art of communication.
Ľudia stratili to umenie, tú zručnosť komunikácie.
I'd rather talk to you on the phone than text you.
Ja by som si radšej s tebou porozprával sa s telefónom, než si s tebou písal.
No, I get a quick text, it's good.
Dostávam takisto krátne správy.
Hey, can you do this for me? Boom, done.
Môžeš to robiť pre mňa? Super.
I get. But I'm not one to go back and forth for 6 hours texting.
Ale nebudem sa s tebou 6 hodín vypisovať.
Or emails that are this long.
Alebo e-maily, ktoré sú tak dlhé.
People send me emails this long.
Ľudia mi posielajú e-maily, ktoré sú tak dlhé.
And they want a response.
A oni chcú odpoveď.
My response is one line.
A moja odpoveď je jedna veta.
That's it.
A to je všetko.
But I can talk to you on the phone.
Môžem sa s tebou porozprávať. Cez telefón.
But we've lost the art of communication.
Ale stratili sme to umenie komunikácie.
It's just another way of psychological warfare.
A toto je iný spôsob psychologického súboja.
No. Let's see. Yeah. Advances in technology
Pokroky v technológiách
have impacted the way people communicate information
ovplyvnilo to, ako ľudia komunikujú informáciu
and the way information is spread. Or misinformation is spread.
aká tá dezinformácia vlastne, chybná informácia je šírená.
Misinformation
Chybná informácia
impacts on society's ability
ovplyvňuje vlastne schopnosť spoločnosti,
to receive information,
aby prijala informáciu,
which then influences our communities,
ktoré potom vlastne ovplyvňujú naše komunity,
politics,
politiku
the medical field.
a takisto aj vplyv
Things like that.
medicínsky.
Why do you think they're trying to stop the Word of God?
Prečo si myslíte, že snažia sa zastaviť Božie slovo?
Because that's the only truth.
Pretože to je jediná pravda.
And they're doing everything they can to keep it away from you.
Oni robia všetko preto, aby to držali od teba čo najďalej.
Now, so we looked at disinformation
Takže
and
sa potrebujeme na dezinformáciu,
misinformation.
chybnú informáciu.
Now we're looking at opposing information.
A teraz hovoríme na takú informáciu, čo ide proti tebe, ako keby argumentačnú.
Opposing information
I need to find the slide.
for opposing.
Yes. One's
Can we call it opposite information?
That's better. Takže vlastne opačná informácia.
Or conflicting
Ale
information?
presne, ktorá vytvára konflikt or argumentative.
Does that work? Yeah, information that doesn't work together,
Skrátka informácia, ktorá nepasuje s tou druhou, že je to opačná.
is coming from anyone
A pochádza od kohokoľvek,
that represent an opposing view
ktorý vlastne reprezentuje opačný názor
based upon factual evidence.
na základe faktických dôkazov.
So you can have absolute fact that this thing doesn't work.
Môžeme teda úplný fakt, že toto nefunguje
And people
a ľudia
will still believe what they want.
budú aj tak veriť tomu, čo chcú.
Even you have truth and evidence
Ak ty máš pravdu a dôkazy.
to the fact that it doesn't work.
Na to, že ten fakt vlastne nefunguje.
They're so brainwashed
Oni sú tak vymití mozgovo,
that they're just convinced that it does work and they'll never see the other side.
že oni sú tak presvedčení, že to funguje a ich nezaujíma ten druhý názor.
Even though you have absolute proof,
Aj ty máš úplnú, že dôkaz.
they still won't believe you
Stále tomu nebudú veriť.
because they've been so programmed. Any psychological operation
Akákoľvek psychologická operácia
begins
začína
with analysis of the operating environment.
analýzou vlastne toho miesta.
So the devil will assess your home.
Takže diabol sa bude snažiť ovplyvňovať napríklad tvoj domov.
The devil will assess your friends.
Takisto bude sa snažiť ovplyvňovať tvojich priateľov.
What family members he can use against you.
Akých rodinných príslušníkov môže použiť proti tebe.
Where to attack you.
Ako ťa vlastne môže napadnúť.
In your finances.
V tvojich financiách.
In your health.
V tvojom zdraví.
You know, wherever.
Kdekoľvek.
Where he will look at this and you're always under that psychological operation.
On sa bude na to pozerať a ty si vlastne vždy pod touto psychologickou operáciou.
Meaning he's always watching you.
To znamená, že vždy sa na teba pozerá.
Where do you think the idea... Okay, do you have a TV show here called Big Brother?
I don't think we have it here. Je taká veľký brat, alebo neviem, či máte.
You had it? Okay.
Tak máme taký.
I would never watch that show in my entire life.
Ja by som nikdy tú show nepozeral v mojom živote.
And if you did, that's up to you. I'm just saying me.
Ak je to na vás, OK, ale ja hovorím o sebe.
I have seen it like an advertisement for it on the internet or whatever.
Videl som to v reklame na internete niekde.
Why would anybody watch that?
Čo by to niekto pozeral?
Same with soap operas. Like soap operas. Do you have soap operas here? Like Days of Our Lives or General Hospital or anything?
No to sú skrátka také nejaké tie srandovné...
Like a daytime TV show, you know?
Také denné reality show, také...
Christians don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know it.
Who watches that stuff?
Kto pozerá tie veci?
Anyway, okay. So if you look at that show Big Brother,
Keď sa pozrieme na tú show, že Veľký brat,
they set up cameras in a house
oni dali kamery do domu,
and they watch their movement for 24 hours a day.
oni vlastne sledovali, čo robia 24 hodín denne,
They act like idiots
spravili sa ich magori,
and they put it on the TV
dali do televízie,
because millions of people watch it.
pretože milióny ľudí to pozerajú.
It's crazy.
To je šialené.
But that's what the enemy does too.
Ale toto robí presne nepriateľ.
He will watch your movements.
On bude sledovať tvoje ťahy,
He'll watch what you watch
bude pozerať, čo
and all this
pozeráš,
stuff,
všetky tie veci,
and then he will use it against you.
a toto použije proti tebe.
That's what he does.
A toto robí.
So it's a psychological operation.
Takže to je psychologická operácia.
Listen, you don't have to fear him,
Teda nemusíš sa ho báť,
but he is plotting and planning against your life
ale stále vlastne plánuje a robí veci proti tvojmu životu.
because he wants your demise.
Lebo chce ťa ovplyvňovať.
Now, some of the things that he studies,
A niektoré veci, čo ukazujú štúdia,
or that psychological operation study,
alebo niektoré takéto štúdium psychologických vecí,
is many things, but I won't cover them all. But culture,
je ich viacero, ale povieme o pár z nich. Kultúra,
political systems,
politické systémy,
political economies,
politická ekonomia,
ideology,
ideológia,
religion,
náboženstvo,
leadership,
líderstvo,
national interests,
taká verejné záujmy,
roles in the media.
nejaké roly v médiách,
This and many more
to a mnohé ďalšie.
are what the devil watch on a regular basis,
To je to, čo diabol vlastne na to pozerá denne.
so he can see what he can use against you.
A pozerá, čo môže vlastne z toho použiť proti tebe.
And again, you don't have to fear being under surveillance
Nemusíš sa báť byť v tom takom nastavení, že si v tom duchovnom súboji.
if you're living right.
Ak žiješ správne,
You see? Think about that.
si sa na tým.
If you live right for God,
Ak žiješ správne pre Boha,
you won't be afraid
nebudeš sa báť.
of being surveilled by the enemy
Že vlastne ten démon, alebo teda to zlo bude na teba vplývať.
because he's got nothing to use against you.
Pretože nemôže si nič použiť proti tebe.
You see? Now, psychological operations
Psychologické operácie
need to have a specific and measurable outcome.
potrebujeme konkrétny a merateľný vlastne to, čo vlastne sa dáva na okolo.
One of them
Jedna z nich
is to influence the enemy
je ovplyvniť nepriateľa,
to surrender
aby vlastne sa vzdal,
by giving up their will.
že odozdá svoju vôľu.
This is why people who suffer with suicidal thoughts,
Preto ľudia, ktorí trpia samovražednými myšlienkami,
you're not just thinking about it.
ty iba na tým nerozmýšľaš.
You're entertaining a devil.
Ty zabávaš diabla.
You're entertaining the spirit of death.
Zabávaš ducha smrti.
It's much more serious than you would think it
Je
is.
to o mnoho serióznejšie, než si možno myslíš.
Psychological operations work to influence the elections.
A takisto psychologické operácie fungujú, aby ovplyvňovali voľby.
We've heard a lot about that lately
My sme o tom veľa počuli v poslednom dobu.
in the United States and other places.
Aj v Amerike, aj v Amerike.
But if they can get into your mind, they can almost force the way you vote.
A teda keď sa vedia dostať tvoje mysle, tak v podstate vedia až prinútiť, ako ty budeš voliť.
All they have to do
Všetko, čo musia oni robiť,
is change the name of something,
že zmeniť meno niečoho,
and it won't sound as bad,
nebude to znieť až tak zle,
and you'll just accept it.
a ty to jednoducho príjmeš.
One prime example of that.
Jeden príklad toho,
Now, whatever you've been through
čímkoľvek ste si prešli
and whatever you've done,
a čokoľvek ste urobili,
again, that's up to you.
OK, je to na vás,
I'm just telling you this.
ale ja vám na to hovorím.
Today we have something that's called women's rights.
Máme dnes niečo, čo sa volá že ženské práva.
A little while ago,
Pred nejakou dobou
it was called abortion.
volalo sa to podhrat.
Before that,
Predtým sa to volalo
it was called child sacrifice.
obetovanie detí.
What sounds worse? Child
Čo
sacrifice
znie horšie? Obetovanie detí
or women's rights?
alebo práva žien?
Child sacrifice.
Obetovanie detí.
It's the same thing,
Je to tá istá vec,
but one sounds better.
ale jedno znie lepšie.
Yeah, I can stand up for women's rights.
Áno, však ja môžem stať za ženské práva.
What if they called it child sacrifice?
Ale v skutočnosti, keby sa to volalo, že je to obetovanie detí,
Less people would not stand up for it.
menej ľudí by som sa to postavilo.
Now, we call things gender affirming.
A teraz máme veci ako keby, že pohlavím neurčitý.
Not that long ago,
Pred nejakou dobou,
it was called child mutilation.
čo to?
Child mutilation.
A že mutácia detí sa to volalo.
They just changed the name.
Vlastne iba zmenili tomu meno.
Why?
Prečo?
Because then it appeals to you differently.
Lebo inak to ľuďom znie.
Child sacrifice.
Obetovanie detí,
I have a whole teaching on it on YouTube.
mám celé vyučovanie o tom na YouTube.
That whole thing
Celá tá vec
was literally sacrificing babies to the god of called Molech.
je to vlastne doslova obetovanie detí bohovi, ktorý sa volá Moach.
Where they sacrificed the burning of babies
Kde vlastne doslova obetovali vlastne tie nenarodené deti.
in a bronze statue.
Nejaké bronzové veľké soche.
And the babies would scream so loud,
A tie deti by tak nahlas kričali,
the priest around Molech, the god Molech,
že ten kňaz pri tej veľkej soche boha Moacha
would beat their drums louder
o to viac by vlastne búchal do bubnov,
to drown out the screams of the babies.
aby vlastne prebil tie kriky tých detí.
That's just truth and reality, guys.
To je reálne.
That's what's biblical.
To je biblické.
So we can't just normalize something
Takže nemôžeme normalizovať niečo,
because they changed the name of it to make it sound better.
lebo to oni tomu zmenili názov, aby to znelo lepšie.
And these are things that certain people won't talk about.
A to sú veci, o ktorých niektorí ľudia nebudú hovoriť.
But if we don't talk about them,
Ale keď o tom nebudeme hovoriť,
we accept them.
tak to vlastne príjmame.
And I won't.
A ja to nebudem príjmať.
So that's all they have to do.
Teda to je to, čo oni musia robiť.
Now, so psychological operations
Teda psychologické operácie,
influences mainstream media
ovplyvňovať mainstreamové médiá,
to propagate the devil's agenda.
aby propagovali diablovú agendu.
Psychological operations
Psychologické operácie
are used to create fear and panic in the masses
sú stvorené, aby tvorili strach a obavy v masách
and designed to keep people in fear to control them.
a takisto aby udržovali ľudí v strachu, aby mohli tak manipulovať a kontrolovať.
There's some psychological operations, they target certain groups,
A sú teda nejaké psychologické operácie, ktoré mieria na niektoré skupiny
and he will find out where you're vulnerable
a aby zistili, že ty si zraniteľný
or weak.
alebo slabý.
So he will target the weakness in your life.
Teda on bude útočiť na slabosť v tvojom živote.
First, he will determine the weakness,
Najprv nejako určite definuje tú slabosť
and then he'll target the weakness.
a potom bude cieliť.
He will find out where you are susceptible to influence.
Nájde miesto, že by si naozaj otvorený tomu vplyvu.
Now, this isn't just the devil to you.
Samozrejme, toto nie je iba diabol v tebe.
This is the devil to the world.
To je diabol pre svet.
And also the world to you.
Ale je to svet pre teba.
Without identifying the vulnerabilities,
Bez toho, že sa nejako jasne konkretizujú tie slabosti,
psychological operations
psychologické operácie,
will have a hard time influencing its target.
budú mať vlastne problém, ako keby vplývať na ten svoj cieľ.
Because he's not going to come after you
Pretože nepôjde po tebe.
with something you're not going to do.
S niečím, čo vieš, že ty to nebudeš robiť.
He's going to come after you with something that you do like to do.
Bude vlastne cieľ na teba s vecami, ktoré vieš, že ty rád robíš.
Because then you'll just keep doing it.
Pretože to znamená, že to budeš opakovane robiť.
And you just call it life.
A si uvažíš váš život.
Social scientists have identified there are two types of basic needs.
Sociálni vedci identifikovali dve typy nejakých základných potrieb.
Biological needs,
Biologické potreby,
things to sustain life,
veci, ktoré nás udržujú pri živote,
like food and water,
ako voda,
shelter,
príbytok,
procreation,
schopnosť sa
having babies. Okay? That's needed.
To je fyzické.
Why do you think they're doing this?
Prečo si myslíš, že to robia?
If they can convince everybody that they're the opposite of what they are,
Keďže presvedčia každého, že sú opakom toho, čo naozaj sú,
you can't repopulate the earth.
tak to potom nemôžeš naplniť celú zem.
If they go around mutilating everybody,
A každého budú mutovať,
you can't repopulate the earth.
tak zase nemôžeš naplniť zem.
And what did God say?
A čo Boh povedal?
Go forth and
Poďte
multiply.
a rozmnožte sa.
Why do you think the devil's trying to destroy it?
Prečo si myslíš, že diabol sa to snaží zničiť?
Do you see it? Can you see it?
Môžete to vidieť?
Maybe you didn't really pay attention to it too much until now.
Možno doteraz si tomu až tak nevenovali pozornosť.
But this is what the enemy's trying to do, is to absolutely destroy
A to sa snaží vlastne nepriateľ urobiť, úplne zničiť
the order that God has put things.
poriadok, do akého Boh vlastne dal veci.
That's what he's trying to do.
Takže to sa snaží urobiť.
So, the next thing is social needs.
A ďalšie sú sociálne potreby.
People need to fit in,
Ľudia potrebujú ich zapadnúť.
and some people will do whatever they can do or whatever they have to do
A niektorí urobia všetko, čo musia, len aby
to fit in,
niekde zapadli.
including
A to takisto zahrania,
doing something against their morals
že robia veci, ktoré sú proti ich morálke.
just so they can fit in,
Len aby niekde mohli zapadnúť.
just so they don't feel rejected.
Len aby sa necítili odmietnutí.
Now, in intelligence,
A inteligencia,
access is everything.
vlastne, že vlastne ten prístup je všetko.
When it comes to psychological operations,
Keď hovorím o psychologických operáciách,
you need to access your target to influence them.
najprv sa musíš vedieť dostať k svojmu cieľu, aby si ho vedel len zamieriť.
Otherwise, you can't affect them.
Teda musíš mať k tomu prístup, ináč nevieš na to vplyvať.
So if somebody doesn't have a television,
Napríklad, niekto nemá televíziu
and a lot of people don't watch television in that particular area,
a väčšina ľudí niekej oblasti napríklad nepozerá televíziu,
there's no reason to have a television campaign.
tak potom nemá zmysel mať nejakú kampaň v televízii.
If in certain areas people don't have newspapers or something,
Ak v niektorých oblastiach ľudia nemajú časopis,
they won't put out newspaper
tak
articles.
pre nich tie články novina nebudú vydávať.
But what do they have?
A to, čo oni majú?
Social media right in front of them.
Sociálne siete, hneď pred nimi.
So that's what the enemy uses on a regular basis.
Takže to je to, čo nepriateľ používa na dennej báze.
And we all eat it up every single day.
A nás ovplyvňuje
Good or bad.
buď v dobrom,
There's good access, there's good stuff to it, and there's bad stuff to it.
teda sú tam dobré veci, ale sú tam aj zlé veci.
And when you're flipping through it,
A keď si scrolluješ,
you get to see it,
môžeš to vidieť.
right? So it depends on how that information gets in you.
A teda záleží, ako tá informácia sa treba,
That's what you have to be careful of.
na to sa treba dať pozor.
Okay, now, there's methods of psychological operations.
A teraz sú metódy psychologické, ako to funguje, operácií,
Radio,
rádio,
scripted interviews,
a napísané intervia,
podcasts,
podcasty,
music,
hudba,
movies,
filmy,
television shows,
televízne
advertisements,
shows,
music
reklamy,
videos, photos.
hudobné videá, fotky.
All that stuff is designed to bombard you.
Všetko je to urobené preto, aby bombardovalo.
I'm not saying it's all wrong,
Opäť nehovorím, že všetko je zlé,
but what are you watching
ale keď to pozeráš
and what is the purpose of it?
a vlastne aký má zmysel, že sa na to pozeráš.
Is it giving you life
Dáva ti to život,
or is it giving you fear?
alebo dáva ti to strach.
You have to decide that.
Ty sa musíš rozhodnúť.
Now here's a couple more ways the devil uses his methods against you.
A opäť niekoľko metód, ako diabol to používa proti tebe.
And remember, we're talking about the soul, the mind,
Opäť hovoríme o duši, o mysli.
and how he spiritually, psychologically
A ako on duchovne, psychologicky
comes after you
ide proti tebe.
and the world.
A svetu.
So some of his other methods are
Takže niektoré z týchto metód sú
intense, emotionally appealing words
intenzívne, emocionálne, také príťažlivé slova,
associated with highly valued concepts
ktoré sú spojené s nejakými vysokocnostnými vecami
and beliefs of the target.
a vierou toho daného cieľa.
He will appeal
A takisto bude cieliť
to emotions
na emócie,
such as love of country,
ako láska k krajine,
desire for peace.
túžba po pokoji,
Freedom,
sloboda,
glory and honor.
sláva a úcta.
Now he'll use these all for the negative. God uses these for the positive, he'll use these for the negative.
A zadajú sa použiť to veci na pozitívne aj na negatívne.
He will use transference,
A,
he'll use methods to
áno, a bude používať ako keby niečo, čo vlastne vie presunúť pozitívne alebo negatívne emócie
onto you.
na teba.
It is often used in politics to transfer blame.
A často sa to používa v politike, že ako ľudia sa snažia presunúť vinu.
Now, how do we use that to today?
A ako to používame dnes?
Whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or not.
Či už si fanúšik Donalda Trumpa alebo nie.
Now, I'm not here for politics.
Nie som tu za politiku.
But everything in the United States right now
Ale všetko v Spojených štátoch,
is being blamed on Donald Trump.
všetko, za všetko sa viní on.
Yet he hasn't been in office in 3 years.
Ale pritom už 3 roky nebol na svojej pozícii.
It's called blame shifting.
To sa volá, že presmerovanie viny.
I guarantee you have had that experience in your life.
A ja vám garantujem, že už ste aj vy mali takúto skúsenosť v svojom živote.
It's a tactic of the enemy.
Je to taktika nepriateľa.
Adam did it with Eve,
Adam a Eva.
right from the very beginning.
Už od samého počiatku.
Why?
Prečo?
Because Eve ate,
Eva jedla,
then Adam ate,
potom Adam jedol,
then God came
potom Boh prišiel.
and said, "Where are you?"
Povedal, kde ste?
"Oh, we're hiding in the bushes."
A schovali sa v kríkoch.
"Why are you hiding?"
Prečo sa schovávate?
"I'm ashamed."
Hanbím sa.
And then he said, "That woman you gave me, she made me eat it."
Tá žena, ktorú si mi dal, on ma prinútil sa to dať.
He was responsible for his own actions.
On bol zodpovedný za svoje vlastné konania,
Blame shifting.
ale presmeroval to vínu na niekoho iného.
And like I said, when we were in Prague,
A ak som bola, boli sme v Prahe,
that's when men started blaming their wives.
What?
That's when men started blaming their wives.
a to bolo vlastne vtedy, keď vlastne muži začínali viniť svoje ženy.
And we've been doing it ever since.
A vlastne odtedy od toho jeden vlastne to robíme dodnes.
But that's where it started, in the garden.
Ale tam to začalo, v zahrade jeden.
So blame shifting
Teda presmerovanie viny
is kind of makes you a target.
a teda vlastne robíte to.
Because you can actually end up feeling guilty for something you never even did.
Sa môžeš cítiť viny za niečo, za čo si vôbec ani nerobil.
It's amazing. Yeah, we'll go past this just for time. So, just trying to give you the definitions of things and
Snažím sa hľadať definíciu vecí,
so you can understand some of the tactics or methods the enemy uses against you.
aby ste mohli porozumieť taktiky alebo metódy, ktoré nepriateľ používa proti vám.
But if you don't recognize them, you'll never be able to expose them.
Ale keď si ich ani neuvedomujete, tak nie ste schopní ich ako odhaliť úplne.
Now, I've called this section True Doctrine is Essential in Spiritual Psychological Warfare.
Túto sekciu som nazval, že správna doktrína je dôležitá pre duchovný psychologický súbor.
If you do not know the truth,
Ak nepoznáš pravdu,
it will be very, very difficult for you to defeat the enemy.
tak bude pre teba veľmi ťažké poraziť nepriateľa.
This is why the enemy goes after truth so much.
Preto nepriateľ tak útočí na tú pravdu.
And why there's so many false prophets in the world.
A preto je toľko falošných prorokov vo svete.
So he can keep you from the truth.
Aby ťa mohol držať oddelené od pravdy.
Because it's the truth
Pretože je toto pravda,
that exposes
ktorá odhaľuje
the enemy's tactics.
taktiky nepriateľa.
Now, John
Jan
8:31 and 32
8:31-32
says this.
hovorí.
Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him,
Potom Ježiš povedal tým Židom, ktorí verili v Neho.
if you remain in my word,
Ak zostanete v mojom slove,
then you are truly my disciples.
potom ste tak naozaj moji učeníci.
Do you see that?
Vidíte to?
That's conditional.
To je podmienka.
See, we don't want a life of conditional Christianity.
Lebo viete, my ako keby nechceme ten život, kde ako keby byť kresťanom má nejaké podmienky, že aby si nich bol.
Because we want our Christian life just to be automatic.
Lebo my chceme, aby to bolo také automatické.
Oh, I believe in Jesus,
Oj, verím Ježiša,
so that's all I need to do.
takže to je to všetko, čo mám robiť.
False.
Falošné je to.
The enemy's convinced you of that. It's
It's
not right. This says, if you remain in my word,
Ježiš povedal, že ak zostanete v mojom slove,
then you are my disciple.
potom ste moji učeníci.
Do you see that? It does not say,
Nehovorí,
just because you said a prayer, you are my disciple.
len preto, že ste povedali modlitbu, tak ste moji učeníci.
It does not say that.
To tam sa nepíše.
It says, if you get in my word, you remain in it.
Ak pôjdete do môjho slova a zostanete v ňom.
And it's in you, and you're in it.
Ty si v tom a to je v tebe.
Then you're my disciple.
Potom si môj učeník.
You're not a disciple because you believe in him.
Nie si učeník, lebo v neho veríš.
You're a disciple because you follow him.
Ty si jeho učeník, lebo ho nasleduješ.
Do you see the difference?
Vidíte ten rozdiel?
Anyway, I don't have time to get hung up on that, but
Vrátim sa na ten
verse 32.
Verš 32.
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Budete poznať pravdu a pravda vás vyslobodí.
You cannot be free without the truth.
Nemôžete byť slobodní bez pravdy.
The whole armor of God, what's the first thing you're told to have on?
Z armády Božej výzbroje, čo je prvá vec, ktorú si máte dať?
In Ephesians chapter 6.
Efezanom 6.
Truth,
Pravda.
right? So the truth is the only way you can be truly free.
Teda pravda je to jediné, čo viete byť naozaj pravdivo slobodný.
It is false doctrine
A sú to falošné doktríny,
that keeps people in bondage
ktoré držia ľudí v zajatí
of sin,
hriechu,
sickness,
choroby,
poverty,
chudoby
etc.
a tak ďalej.
You cannot have faith beyond your knowledge of the word.
Nemôžete mať vieru nad poznanie Božieho slova.
Period.
Bodka.
If you don't think God heals,
Ak neviete, že Boh uzdravuje.
you will not have faith for it.
Ak to neviete, tak ani nebudete tomu veriť.
If you don't think God delivers,
Ak si nemyslíte, že Boh ľudí
you will
oslobodí,
not have faith for it.
tak nebudete mať preto vieru.
Mark chapter 7,
Marek kapitola 7,
5 through 8.
5-8.
So the Pharisees and scribes asked him,
Takže farizei a zákonníci sa ho opýtali.
why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders,
Prečo tvoji učeníci nežijú podľa tradícií starších,
but eat bread with unwashed
ale
hands?
jedia chleb s nečistými rukami?
He answered,
A on odpovedal.
well, has Isaiah prophesied of you, hypocrites?
Tak ako Izajáš prorokoval o vás, vy pokrytci.
It is as it is written.
Ako je napísané.
These people honor me with their lips,
Títo ľudia ma ctia svojimi ústami,
but their hearts are far from me.
ale ich srdcia sú odo mňa ďaleko.
In vain do they worship me,
Naozaj márne ma uctievajú.
teaching as doctrines the precepts of men,
Učia doktríny a nauky ľudí,
for laying aside the commandment of God.
ale Božie prikázanie dávajú nabok.
You hold the tradition of men,
Vy sa držíte tradície ľudskej.
the washing of pitchers and cups,
Umývanie všetkých šálov a vecí
and many such things
a
you do.
veľa ďalších vecí, ktoré robíte.
So these people did not have true doctrine.
A teda títo ľudia nemali pravú doktrínu.
They walked by tradition,
Kráčali tradíciou
and they were deceived.
a boli oklamaní.
They did all the right things,
Urobili všetky tie správne veci
and they honored God
a ctili Boha
with their lips,
ich ústami,
not their heart.
ale nie srdcom.
Do you see the difference?
Vidíte ten rozdiel?
He said,
On povedal,
in vain they worship me.
márne ma uctievajú.
See, we think that when we come into church or something,
My si myslíme, že keď ideme do cirkvi, tak to už je niečo.
that however we're living,
Teda akokoľvek žijeme,
whatever we did the night before,
čokoľvek sme robili deň predtým,
if we come to church on Sunday morning,
ak prídeme do cirkvi v nedeľu ráno.
And I clap my hands.
A tlieskame svojimi rukami.
And I tap my foot.
A dúpem si nogami.
And I do a little dance.
A robím malý tanec.
I sing some words.
A zaspievam nejaké slova.
God is so pleased with my worship.
Boh je tak nadšený z môjho uctievaní.
Not if your heart's not right with God.
Ale nie, ak tvoje srdce je na nesprávnom mieste s Bohom.
It's what it says.
To je to, čo tu hovorí.
They honor me with their lips. They're worshiping with their lips.
Oni ma uctievajú so svojimi ústami.
But their hearts are not with me.
Ale ich srdce nie sú so mnou.
So therefore they're worshiping me in vain.
A teda uctievajú ma márne.
Which means for nothing.
To znamená, že úplne zbytočne.
Do you see that?
Vidíte to?
In John chapter 4,
V Jánovi 4. kapitole.
Jesus talked about worshiping him with spirit and truth.
Hovorí o tom Ježiš, ako ho treba uctievať v duchu a v pravde.
If you do not have a true heart towards God,
Ak nemáš pravivé srdce voči Bohu,
you are worshiping him in vain.
tak márne ho uctievaš.
Just letting that sink in for a second.
Nechám to len tak
I'm not lost for words.
Nestačil som slovo.
I want you to be right with God. I'm not saying you're not. I don't know you.
Chcem, aby ste boli správne s Bohom. A nehovorím, že nie ste.
But we think
Ale my si myslíme,
that we do God a favor by worshiping him.
že my Bohu robíme ako keby nejakú službu tým, že ho uctievame.
No, he did you a favor
Nie, on ti ako keby len tak uslúžil.
by allowing you to. By allowing you to.
Že ti to vlastne vôbec dovolil.
Because we all deserve death and punishment.
Lebo my všetci zaslúžime trest a smrť.
And we think we can live like the devil,
A my si myslíme, že môžeme žiť ako
come into church,
ísť do cirkvi.
and God is just so happy with us.
A Boh je tak šťastný s nami.
And he gives him a gold star in heaven. Oh, look, another day at church.
A tam nejakú, dáva si ako keby nejakú zlatú pozlatku v nebi, že ako si to znáši, že ďalší.
Like God's whole week
Že ten celý týždeň.
is just waiting to see if you show up at church.
Že ako keby len čakala, či sa objavíš v tej cirkvi v nedeľu.
I'm not telling you not to show up in church,
Nehovorím, aby ste nešli do tej cirkvi.
but going to church is not the day that you get right with God.
Ale ísť do deň, keď ideš do cirkvi, neznamená, keď sa dávaš ako keby do poriadku
Every
s Bohom.
day you're right with God.
Každý deň máš kráčať s Bohom.
And you go celebrate it on Sundays with everybody else.
A potom to v nedeľu ideš oslavovať s každým ďalším.
Instead of living like the devil all week long,
Namiesto toho, aby si celý týždeň žil ako diabol,
and then just hoping
a potom len dúfaj,
the pastor will bring you a word
že pastor povie nejaké dobré slovo,
that won't make you feel terrible about yourself.
aby ti neurobilo, že sa budeš cítiť zle o sebe.
It's not his job.
To nie je jeho práca.
It's your job
Je to tvoja práca,
to be right with God.
aby si bol správne na tom s Bohom.
See, this is coming in here is just a celebration
To, že sa tu skádzame, to je len oslava.
of truth
Pravdy
and life.
a života.
You don't die all week long just to find life on Sunday morning.
Nezomiereš celý týždeň, aby si v nedeľu našiel ráno nejaký život.
Because you spend more time dead than you do alive.
Lebo potom by si viacej času trávil mŕtvy ako živý.
So don't worship God with your lips.
Takže nechvál Boha svojimi ústami.
Honor him with your heart.
Pusti ho svojim srdcom.
Don't be around your friends living exactly the way the world does
Nebuď okolo svojich kamarátov, žijú rovnako ako žije celý svet.
and call yourself a Christian.
A nevolaj sa taký kresťan.
Don't do that.
Nerob to.
Do you see? Boy, it's just... I can feel some of the hearts in here just sinking to their feet.
Cítim, ako máš niektoré srdce, ako to bije, že ešte ideš do toho. Ako sa máš tak...
How do you translate that?
Ako keby sa vám potápalo to srdce, taký ten pás.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad.
Nesnažím sa vás urobiť, aby ste sa cítili zle.
And if you are feeling bad,
Ak sa cítite zle,
maybe it's because you're not right with God.
možno preto, že nie ste zmierni s Bohom.
So would that be my fault?
Takže je to moja vina?
Or would it be your fault?
Alebo vaša vina?
Because I know it's not mine.
Lebo ja viem, že to nie je moja vina.
And listen, I'm not here to tell you that I'm perfect.
Ja nie som tu preto, aby som vám povedal, že som dokonalý.
As I always say,
Ako vždy hovorím,
ask my wife.
opýtajte sa mojej manželky.
Just saying.
Iba vám hovorím.
No, maybe not. Don't do that.
Ale možno to nerobím.
I'm kidding. Yes, you can. You can go talk to my wife, and you can go talk to our team, and you can find out how I live.
Robím si radu. Kľudne môžete ísť za mojou ženou, za mojím tímom, opýtať sa ich, ako žijem naozaj.
Babe, you might be real busy in the next few minutes.
Takže Miláček, možno budeš veľmi zamestnaná na nasledujúce minúty.
Because I don't live perfect.
Lebo ja nežijem dokonalo.
There's no such thing as perfect,
Nie je niečo také, že dokonalý.
except for Christ, of course.
Iba samozrejme, že Kristus.
But I live right.
Ale ja žijem správne.
Do you see the difference?
Vidíte ten rozdiel?
Anyway, we got to take a break, but
Takže budeme prestať.
yeah. Anyway, we'll come back and we'll keep talking about how true doctrine is essential in your battle against spiritual psychological warfare.
Po prestávke budeme hovoriť o tom, ako správna doktrína je dôležitá pre váš práve duchovný psychologický súboj.
About 10, 11 minutes, something like that, okay?
10 minút.